Right, fingers crossed we got it sorted, and I can see a chat here. So hopefully we're sorted now. So I'll leave my phone there in case of emergencies, which regularly happens with me. So fingers crossed this is the one and we've got it sorted. So I've got a thumbs up and I've got what hi Paul, this from Joe Farley. You're right, Joe. Sorry it's taken a few attempts. This is from Sean Downs. Yes, you're on. Oh, that's brilliant. This is brilliant. Look at that. I am absolutely useless. I'm good at the prepping side of it as such, but not the best with technology. So I'm just going to try and set this up a little bit so you can see. What I'm going to do, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to walk around the back, move it back a bit, and that way you can see what we're up to as such. So give me a second, make sure I don't drop it. Hopefully that is a bit better. Right. Yeah, that's a bit better, isn't it? So I've got a bit of space. So Joe's put whoop whoop, so that means we're definitely on. So lads, what I'm doing today is I'm doing some prep. Had a match on Wednesday and then I was out with the Guru boys yesterday. So I'm just having a day off doing some prep, and I thought I'd go live on YouTube. If you've got any prep questions, any bait questions, whilst all my bits are here, you know, anything you're struggling with, by all means fire it over. And then I can show you about, some people say it's the boring side. I really enjoy doing it. But yeah, John Ferris has put, thank God for Joe, definitely. And Sean's put, Joe is a good and she's brilliant. That's why teamwork makes the dream work. I think people think that I'm genuinely winding them up, like every time we do our live giveaways. I haven't got a clue. I genuinely do not. I don't know how I've got this far in life, to be honest. So, but yeah, if it wasn't for Joe and Baz, we'd be knackered, like proper knackered. So at the moment, what I'm doing is I'm just tying up like my Gloucester floats. Really nice. Just like a little wire stem flow, nice fibre bristle. Guru are bringing out some, and I got to see the sort of first prototype when I was with them yesterday, and they're really nice, to be fair, but Matt didn't bring enough to give to me, so I'm going to have to wait for them to be sort of mass produced before I get a few. And then Ian Diddy, that was me texting you. Ian, you're a star. Ian Didcut, lovely lad, Silverfish Master. Thank you ever so much, Ian, you're a star. So what I'm going to do is not get it all tangled. Just want to talk you through, you know, like how I prepare, and then any questions, like I say, by all means fire them over. So this one at Gold, it's, I'd say, between 6 and 8 foot deep. And normally the two floats that I like using is my sort of Gloucester pattern, wire stem, nice fibre bristle. And there, where it's sort of 6 to 8 foot, 0.75 a gram is normally perfect. When you're starting to use sort of a gram and heavier, you just don't get as many bites. So 0.75 is perfect. Half a gram, it's a bit too light, drifts about a bit. But when it gets really hard, more to the point when these little roach aren't feeding, at the moment it's still really mild, so there's a lot of little roach still feeding there. But you'd be amazed at times when it's rock hard and you can hardly get any bites, by using sort of a carbon stem float rather than your wire. And it's, I'd say it's ever so slightly lighter in terms of the shotting it takes, but it takes so much longer to fall through the water. You'd be amazed at how many more bites you get on a carbon stem float over a wire float. So just doing my bit of prep, and on my little book here, I've just got like most of them I can remember, but like my perfect Gloucesters, in terms of like the shotting that they take. And that's the one nice thing, once you've got your floats that you like, I always tend to try and get them in quite a few floats as well. So you'll find that they all take the same shotting. So instead of having your shotting tube and having to shot each one, with that, it's perfect. Like with these, I know almost off by heart now, because that's the one that I use a lot. It takes 2 number 9 shot, 8 number 8 shot, and then a few little number 12 trimming shot. So I just thought I'd run you through how I tie them up as such. So John's put, have you used the RW Chimp Shet pool? So this float here is a carbon chimp. These are the ones that Rich made for me, Andy and Christian for Hayfield. And he made us a 0.6, a gram and a half, and a 2 gram one. And it's funny with these floats. So now you've mentioned them, they sit really, really nice, like ridiculously nice, especially on deep lakes. And I think a lot of it is to do with the length of the bristle. And the one nice thing about having Rich is if you want a float specific for what you want it to do, if that makes sense, as long as you sort of order enough off of it and make it worth your while, setting all the machine up as such, he'll make you whatever you want. And the length of the bristle, the length of the stem, the shot roughly that you want it to take. So then he sends you a prototype one. Are you happy with that? If you like it, then you just run them off. But so the ones that he made us were a 0.6 up to 2 gram. And I asked him, let me just show you up a bit up close. I'll have to hold it here. But that one is a 0.4. So it's ever such a light flow. And I just always get him to make me the carbon nice and long. So it's really interesting that, you know, we've gone on to this, because this 4B16 is a 1.7 mil Maggie. But I get Rich to send me them longer. So the carbon's really long. And for what I would say for my normal normal fishing, up to sort of 5, maybe 5.5, 6 foot deep, I'll actually grab them so I can show you. So give me 2 seconds. You've got my rig box over here. Because this bit is so important in terms of, you know, how your float sits. So that one there is sort of I'm going to try my best to show you. So that one there is a standard 4B14 1.7 mil Maggies. And if I've got my ruler somewhere, again, give us a second. Everything's here, but it's all a bit spread out. So this bristle length is, I would say, 9.5 centimeters long, roughly. So that's what I like as a standard, you know, for your standard style of fishing. But where a gold is a bit deeper, and I get him to make me stems. So this one is 11 centimeters long, the actual stem length. And you wouldn't believe the difference, just that extra 1.5 centimeters, how much better the float sits in the water. It just doesn't drift around as much. I think it's trying to get everything in proportion to the depth that you're fishing in. And the deeper the water is, you know, really the longer the float you want it. So I got him to make me these ones, you know, then that 0.4 for fishing shore. They only take sort of 5 number 8 cubes. They don't take a lot of shot, 5 number 8 shot and a few trimming shot. But when you're fishing shore with hard pellets, when I went and had a practice at Todber, and I was using what float did I use? I used a 4B16 1.7 mil Maggie, and I had it a few times. When I flicked my rig out to throw my pellets in, as it's settling up, it's gone on the way down, and I thought I definitely want a lighter flow. So these ones are nice, and then all I do is just cut them down to suit. So these 2 floats are the same flow, but I'll just try and show you. I'm going to move my body out of the way just so you can see that I've just cut the bristle down ever so slight, the stem ever so slightly. And it just, once you've had a go with it and you think, yeah, that's settled really, really nicely. The problem is the bristle, the stem, keep getting mixed up. If the stem's too long, it doesn't quite sink right, you know, settle correctly. Whereas when you cut it down, that one looks absolutely perfect. So yeah, they're brilliant floats, and it's a lovely, the one thing that I love about having Rich is, for that reason, you know, not only is his floats absolutely brilliant, but if you've got something a bit that, you know, you've got a certain venue, you're fishing a certain bay, and you think this one's all right, but it's not quite the one that I want, that's the one good thing. Just literally message him and just say, Rich, he knows I'm a pain in the backside. Would you mind? I always try and be as polite as I can. So he says yes and not, Paul, you're being a pain in the bum again. But yeah, they're brilliant floats. To be fair, everything that he makes is absolutely spot on. They all spin straight and they all take the right amount of shot as well. So very, very difficult in terms of, mass production. But sometimes we want something, a bit bespoke to us. So yeah, I've definitely used them, Jonathan. So that was Ian, and then used Carbon Chimp. So what I'm going to do, otherwise I'll lose whose questions I've answered as such. So Tony Curtis here has put winter F1 hook choices for maggot. So here, if I get me hooks out, like this is another little thing that I like doing. So if I show you, I've moved it down because normally it's up here, but if I left it there, we wouldn't be able to see. I've just got like a little storage box, and in there, I love a tub for a tub me, but I've got like my shots, my big hooks, my bands. So they're my cubes. These are my shot. And then in here, I've just got some like Sharpie pens, Stanley knives, super glue, a spare diamond eye threader. In this one, I have like all my float silicone, and in this one, I have my hooks. And one thing that I like doing is, especially when I'm going away, you never know quite what you've got. And in the past, I always used to just get me hooks, put them in my box. But the amount of times when I'd be, say, Cornwall, if I'm there for 2 weeks, and you know what it's like, someone says, oh, have you got any of these hooks? And I think, yeah, I've probably got a few. And I look through and there's one hook in that one, 2 hooks in that one. And I thought I had a load and I haven't got any. And then you go into the shop and they're out of stock. So what I like doing now is once my hooks are in my packet, I'll try my best to show you in there. That way, when I'm doing my prep and I look and I think, I'm running low, I know I need to stock up. So it's a little simple thing, but it makes sure you never get caught out. So I'm just going to go through my hooks. They'll probably be at the bottom because I've got plenty tied up, but I haven't started tying lots of them yet. So F1, winter F1 hooks. Some people like F1 mag hooks, and they're really nice, to be fair. They're quite they're a much longer point than an F1 pellet hook, and they are super strong, to be fair. But I personally just want one thing that I use, and once you've got confidence in something, I tend not to change, to be honest. So what I would say for your maggot hooks, so if you was out this weekend, it's still quite mild, so you could probably use an 18 Super LWG to say 012 and it'd be all right. But I still like using the F1 pellet hook. So when it's proper winter fishing, the hooks that I tie, so I've got a 16 F1 pellet hook there, and I just tie that to 012. 010, I think the line is too light, really. You could tie some 010s to a 16 for dobbing bread, but in terms of fishing with maggots, I'd like using 012. I think 012 and a 16 F1 pellet hook, that's perfectly balanced. 014 is too heavy for the hook. 010, to be honest, a bit too light for the hook. If you wanted to fish 010, then I'd go down to an 18 F1 pellet hook with like double maggot or maggot and a pinky. I'd say more often than not where I go, when it's mainly tunnel, to be fair. And then when I go to Cornwall, I never find single maggot works for me. Whether I'm fishing shallow or fishing on the bottom, I always find double baits better. So double maggot or a maggot and a pinky, they tend to be the best hook baits. So 012 and a 16 F1 pellet hook. When it's still quite good, 010 and an 18 F1 pellet hook. And then lastly, 010 and a 20 F1 pellet hook. And one of my mates put me on those a few years ago now, and I have spoke about it before, and I drew a brilliant peg, or can be a brilliant peg 33 on top, and it was one of Tom Scully's winter things that he was running. And when I got there, it was like a flooded river colour. So because it's the lowest one, and behind top there's loads of fields, there's nothing sort of to the left of top, and basically it runs into the lake. So when you get a lot of rain, that's the one. The other lakes stay normal colour, I would say, unless there's a lot of rain, and then it's running in off the paths, and that can change the colour of the water. But Top is the only one that really goes like a flooded river colour. You look at it and just think, wow, that's literally chocolate brown. But the point I wanted to make is that day, I didn't get it right early on, but I went in and I started catching really well on maggots, like really well. And my peg was solid with them. And you think it's been you don't have many matches like that where you're literally emptying it short on maggots. And I was catching that well, and I've unhooked one of my fish and popped it in the net, and I've gone to hook my maggot and it's just pinched it a little bit. And I thought, no. So I bit my hook off, put it on my thing, got out my hook box, and I'm going to go and grab my hook boxes. So that way I can show you. Again, I might be bouncing in and out, but the nice thing down here is like this is my prep room, so I've got everything with me. So in that hook box there, the bottom one you'll be able to see it's an 18 to 010, and the top one is a 20 to 010. They're both F1 pellet hooks. You'll be able to see there, just me F1 pellet hook box. And that day was absolutely solid, and just not thinking, to be honest, just wanting to get out quicker. So I bit my hook off, put it down, and I've just picked up an 18 to 010. And when I put my loop over my main line, so put your hook length loop over your main line and then put your hook back through your main line, and that way you get that sort of connection. And it's definitely better rather than threading your hook length loop through your main line and then your hook through your hook length loop, if that makes sense. So anyway, I put that on, not thought anything of it, and when I put it through, I thought, bloody hell, that hook's big when compared to a 20 F1 pellet hook, and I thought that ain't going to make a difference, it's solid. So I baited up, double maggot, a few maggots in my pot, gone out, shook, whacked them in quick, flicked my rig in, waited for like 2-3 minutes, never moved, and I thought, well, that's weird. So I threw a few maggots in, flicked my rig in again, it settled up, never moved, and I thought, it's in my head now. Now I've changed it. I thought, no, I'll come in. So I bit that hook off, put my 20 back on, double maggot, a few maggots in my pot, shipped out, smacked them in one lump again, flicked my rig in, it settled up, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, like dotted down, it's just gone whack. And from that day on, the difference between using a 20 F1 pellet hook and an 18, and if it makes a difference when literally, if you was under the water, you would not be able to see an inch in front of your face. It was that coloured. Since then, I've been convinced that it makes a big difference. So personally, when the fishing's good, 16 F1 pellet hook, 012 is absolutely fine. If you're using your puller a bit too much and they're still fighting too hard, which is sort of now, to be honest, then I'd probably use 014 and a 18 Super LWG, or even 012 and an 18 Super LWG, just because the hook's a little bit thicker, you're not going to open them up. But the second they stop fighting, really, when you're changing from, I'd say, white hydro, that equivalent, 014, 012, but use Super LWGs because they're just a bit more meat in the hook. But when that elastic's wrong and you're hooking them and they're not fighting, nothing's coming out, and you want to be changing sort of blue hydro, pink, orange hydro, even yellow hydro, that, again, that equivalent, that's when, you want to be changing over to your F1 pellet hook. So hopefully that helps you, Tony, with that question as such. So on to our next one. This one's from Sam Wood. When would you use spread out shot with a wire stem float? Cheers. So Sam, the only time I ever fish strung out shot, full stop, to be honest, is when I'm fishing shallow or when I'm fishing with micros and expanders. And the reason being is when I'm fishing shallow and I want that slow fall, so like using, more for like your F1s or ropes and stuff, a tiny little like 4B8, this is a winter maggies, but again, a shanty style float. When I'm fishing like that, I like using strung out shot. And the reason I like using shot over cubes is when you're netting a fish and you've got a strung out rig, what can happen is, especially with using cubes, not just cubes, like Preston makes Stots, other companies make a similar type of, that shape type of shot. when you net a fish and unhook it and put it in your rig, it all slides where it's on your landing net, and they move really, really easy, to be honest, which is a good thing at times. But when you're fishing shallow, it's a nightmare because you want to just get back out. So every single time you have to resort your rig out. So I just find by using shot on me shallow rigs, you can slide them and they won't damage your line, but they don't slide all of the time. So when I'm fishing shallow, I'll always use shot because it gives me the option of being able to string it out and it's not going to move. And the only other time I use a strung out shotting pattern is when I'm fishing with micros and expanders with a wire stem flow. And the reason being is you're never really going to sort of flick your rig out. You're always going to feed your bait and lower your rig in that way. Personally, when I'm fishing on the bottom for anything else, I like fishing with a bulk and 1 dropper or a bulk and 2 droppers. And almost always I use a carbon stem flow. And what that allows you to do is when you shot it like that, rather than fishing strung out, so just say you wanted to use like a 4x10, it's 3.5 foot deep, 4 foot deep, and you think, well, I want a little nice 4x10 flow, like feeding your maggots and getting that nice slow fall, which you do. But the problem is, because there's no weight in the actual flow, because it's carbon, what will happen is it drift about and it just move with any wind or any water movement. And that's not a good thing. So you want a slow fall at your bait, especially when you're fishing for F1s. Well, to be honest, not just for F1s, for carp, for skimmers. Having that slow fall of the bait makes a massive difference at times. But what's really, really important is when your rig is set, i.e., your hook bait's on the bottom, you don't want your float to move. So I found I can use a live float, but by shotting it with a bulk and droppers rather than strung out, I can get that slow fall by, keeping my pole tip nice and low in my back shot and letting the rig slowly fall. And then when I can't see my bristle, just start lifting the pole up, your back shots come up a bit, which in order your float will pop up. And then as it's settling, just eventually sort of lift your pole up so you've got that L shape. So you get that lovely slow fall of your bait. But then when your rig's set, so your hook bait's on the bottom now, your rig don't drift around because your main bulk of shot is sort of like the bottom third of the rig. And I find that that's really, really important. So strung out shot, shallow fishing, and when you're fishing with micros and expanders. But anything other than that, I just opt for a bulk and a dropper, or a bulk and 2 droppers, depending on how deep it is. And if it's silly deep, like if it was going Porth, somewhere like that, top 4, then you might want a bulk and 3 droppers. It's just all about getting the bulk of the weight in the bottom third of the rig. So again, that's why I never really, apart from me Gloucester style floats, which I make up actually on this board because I want my shot at a certain distance, because I'm only going to, so that 0.75 flow, I'm only really going to use that up to sort of 8 foot deep. If I start getting deeper than that, then I'm going to want a gram. And what I do is for the weight of each float, so just to give you a rough idea of that, so a 0.5, I have a dropper at 6 inches and 12 inch, my bulk at 19 inches. And then for 0.75 and a gram, so yeah, for 0.75 and a gram, I have a dropper at 6 inch, 13 inch, and my bulk at 22 inch. But then when I get to 1.25 a gram, I have a shot, my droppers at 6 and 14 inch, and then my bulk at 2 foot. So that way it just gives me the option of maybe having 3 droppers. So hopefully there's a few tips there to help you out. So our next one is from Paul Homer. Do me some. I'm getting my gear back together after my nightmare. I know, Paul, I'm so sorry to hear about that. But on a plus side, it's nice that you're coming back fishing. Hopefully I'll see you soon. So Ian Didcut's put bigger lake, more skin, more tow. Exactly, 100% there. So this from Joe Farley. Hi, Paul, completely wrong time of the year, but what float do you use to overshot in the summer, and how much shot do you use it with? Thanks. So again, Joe, give me 1 second and I'll go and grab it. Go and grab me shoulder. Oh, so get back in. I'm tripping over all my bits here. So when it comes to me shallow rigs, I think when you're overshotting your rig, what's really, really important, again, I'm not an expert at it, but what I found really, really important is how your float sinks. So again, with tunnel, because you've got a line length limit, 4 inches, I always try and have my rig set up at sort of 6-inch plus my 4-inch line, and then I have one at say 9-inch plus my 4-inch line, and then 12-inch plus my 4-inch line, and then from 12 I'll go every 4-inch, so 12, 16, 20, 24, and then 30 if you want to. And I'll explain a bit about that. So when me 3, so me 6, 9 and 12, the reason I only have them 3-inch apart is because a lot of the time those rigs are when I'm fishing shallow and overshotting my rig up to cover. And you find that if I had them at 4-inch, so 6, 10, I want what really one at 9 and then 12. Now, I like it like that for the reason being is if just say I'm catching a 16 inches deep on a fixed standard rig and I'm missing an odd bite, but I know that's the depth where the fish are at, where they're feeding, then what I can do is I can overshot my normal rig. Because what you'll end up finding, to be honest, is otherwise you'll have normal rigs, fixed rigs, and before you know it, fixed rigs, floating rigs, and overshotted rigs, and before you know it, you've got an absolute boatload of stuff. I tend to set up like 3 overshotted rigs, and then normal rigs from 6-inch all the way down to 2 foot, normally 24 inches. But the reason I like having them like that is, again, so just say I'm fishing at 16-inch and that's where the fish are, then what I can do is I can pick up my 12-inch rig, overshot it, and then I know when I put my pole tip on the water that with 12-inch plus my 4-inch line, which is the line limit there, I know I'm fishing at that depth. The overshotting is brilliant because you never miss a bite. They just pull the elastic out, or you get an odd dink every now and again, but you don't miss a lot of bites. The downside is you don't see any bites. So you need to use your fixed rigs to find the depth of where the fish are at, and then you can overshot to that. And normally what will happen is you'll clatter them because they're dead easy to catch, or a lot easier to catch on your overshotted rigs, and then you'll stop getting bites, and then you have to go back to your fixed rigs. But quickly touching on, so now you know where the fish are at, how you overshot your rig is so important. So the float I like using, and again, it's all about resistance. So in years gone by, probably way before I knew about overshotting, but I'd heard about it, people like using a BB and an SSG to sort of just sink it really, really quickly, if that makes sense, like a real aggressive bolt rig. But as with everything, as more people are doing it, the fish get cuter and cuter and cuter to be able to catch. So the resistance in your rig, more importantly, the shot you've got down the line is really, really important. And sometimes when it's windy, so just to give you a rough idea, the float I use is the #1 RW Dibber. So if I can show you that, there it is, little #1 RW Dibber. The reason I like that float is because one #8 floats it. So my rig will suspend one #8 cube. So when I'm fishing shallow to cover, sometimes they're really shallow and you don't actually want an overshotted rig. Because the cover's here, they're coming up and eating, the odd caster, they're knocking the reeds and the odd casters falling through. They'll eat really, really shallow. So with that flow, one #8, I know it can float it. 2 #8s and the rig just slowly starts sinking it. But 3 #8s and it sinks like a brick. And even 4 #8s, it's like ridiculously, sinking. You wouldn't believe the difference it can make. So you could be using, say, 2 #8s and it's slowly going and you don't get many bites. You get an odd one, you put one more #8 on it and it's ridiculous. You could just go in and just catch one every single chuck. Other times it works the other way around. So you could have 3 #8s catching an odd one, and it's like, take one #8 off and all of a sudden now it's slowly going, so it's always moving. But because it's always tight, what you're doing when you overshot it and your rig sinks like ridiculously quick, you think about it, if you bit your rig off and throw it in, it just go vroom to the bottom with, say, a BB on it. Basically, any movement that you make on the pole, so if it's moving in the wind, if you lift it up, the hook bait's doing all of that within reason. Obviously, there is a bit of slack as it's falling as such with the length of your hook length, but any movement on the pole is being transferred onto your hook bait. So you're in really direct control of your hook bait. But just by having it where it slowly sinks, what you can do is be able to slap your rig over and just put your pole on the water, but your rig is sort of fishing itself. No matter what your pole's doing within reason, it's not being directly transferred onto the hook bait as much. So biggest things, the amount of shot you've got down your line can make a massive difference one way or the other. You can either some days overshotting it by a lot, making it sink like a brick, especially days when it's really windy. That can make a big difference. But likewise, other days, having it just so it gently falls is really important. So the float you actually use, even though you want it to sink, is really important. And I think it's always the case, especially when you're fishing shallow overshotting for them, the least amount of shot down the line, the better. So if I use, say, another dibber float that took, say, 3 number 8s to float it and then 1 number 8 to slowly sink it, I've got 4 number 8s and there's just too much shot down the line. So ideally, you want the smallest float possible. But even if I was going as far as saying that some venues you don't have to have a float on your line, I would always have a float on my line because that's slowing the fall of my hook bait and making it look more natural. So to answer your question, a number 1 RW dibber, but that's the reason why I like it as well, is it gives me those 3 options. A floating rig when I'm fishing shallow to cover, I've got the option of being able to have my rig floating. I've got the option to be able to slowly sink it. And I've got the option to be able to overshot it quite a lot, but it's all in proportion. I don't have too much weight on the line of the rig. So hopefully, Joe, that helps answer that question. So that's from Joe. And then John Ferris put, what meal tips are in those chimps, Paul? A 1.7. I think they're a 1.7. Let me have a look. No, I think they're a 2 mil now, or 1.9 looking at it, Jonathan. So again, if I get my head out of the way, try and hold it there. You can see it's ever so slightly thicker. I'm convinced they're sort of they're either a 2 mil or a 1.9. They're very close to a 2 mil bristle, because I'm sure that one there is a 1.7, Maggie. Yeah, that's definitely a 1.7, not a 1.5. So yeah, I would say looking like a 2 mil tip, to be honest, Jonathan. So Tony's put, cheers for the info, no problems whatsoever. So I want to see if we've got any more questions. So I think that's our questions up till now. So Jonathan's put, thanks Paul, appreciate it. No problems at all, Jonathan. So I'll wait for a few more questions to come up, and then what I'm going to do is just talk you through, put these down out of the way a second, pop that out of the way. Now I'm just going to talk you through how I shot me Gloucester up, but just to try and give you a bit of advice as well when you're using new silicone. So when I break my rigs off, I always leave the line, and then to attach me rig, what I can do, which again saves, the hardest bit I think about making a rig is putting actually the silicone on the flow. So by butting the 2 bits of line up together, you can see, so I've got my rig line, which is there, and I've got my flow, which is still on my line. By putting the 2 bits of line together and then an overhand knot like so, and then pull it up nice and tight, make sure it don't slip, and then by wetting your float, so I'll just fold it and take the bottom bit of silicone off. It's just that this one's silicone hasn't been on the float that much, if that makes sense. So it's still what I would say is sort of new silicone. And again, when you're making your rig, just double check your silicone, but more often than not, your silicone will last forever, you know, on your flow. You bristle with this color before your silicone ever goes. And that way, it's on the line now, it's on the rig ready to be made as such. So that saves so much time, it's frightening. And that's why, you know, when people say, oh, do you use your rig every single time, you know, retie it up? More often than not, yes, unless I've set, you know, like a deep shallow rig up, say tunnel, and I've only caught 2 or 3 fish on it, then I just put it back on the winder. But if I've caught a few fish, and more to the point, it's a bottom rig, I'd much rather just retie it, because I don't want to go to my next match and it be just too short. And to be honest, it doesn't take that long. But when you get to, you know, just say like with this one, my silicone's off of it, because what I'd done is I had this rig, which is a 0.75. So when I was out with the Guru boys, because it's already got my shot on, I just took my float off and popped one of theirs on, and then just changed the shot in. But when it comes to tying a rig, you know, for the first time, or more importantly, putting new silicone on, if I pop it on, I just want to explain, because it's more really for your wire floats. You can't bend carbon, just got brilliant memory, and it always wants to come back to itself. But what I like doing when I've got a float with, say, brand new silicone, and I want it on the float quite tight, you know, I don't want it too loose, because what can happen is if you lose a fish, you know, your float can always slide, but I don't want it to slide too easy. So picking the right silicone. So in here, I've got a right mishmash of silicone. So I've got, if I can hold that up so you can see it. So you'll be able to see I've got some black silicone there, dropping most of it on the floor. And then I've got some clear silicone. And personally, what I find is like my black silicone, it's actually hook silicone. So it's made for holding your hair in place. But for my flows, the ones that I use, like 015, 017, that silicone is really, really nice. And it just, for your 015, 017 mainline, your carbon and your wire stems are more often be, I think, 0.6 to maybe 0.8, or is it 0.4 and 0.6? But basically that silicone will fit all your carbon floats and all your wire floats. And then when you're starting to get to, you know, like what I'd say is a proper carp float, like that might be a 0.8 actually silicone. But with that float, because it's a proper carp float, I'm going to be tying it to 022 mainline or 020 mainline. So with that flow, then I like using, you know, the clear silicone, because it's a lot thicker. But this is a Blue Peter one as such. Here's one that I made just before we was going live. But if I'll try and hold it as best I can. So you can see I've got my 2 bits of silicone. But down here, the bottom bit is actually there just on my line. If I can hold it still. And I always leave that bit off. So once I've tied a new float with new silicone, I never put that bit of silicone at the bottom of the float. So that way, one, it's a note to me when I get that rig out. I know that if the silicone's not at the bottom of the float, it's a new float. If I put that bit of silicone on, when I go to, even if I wet my line and slide my float, you'll end up sort of pigtailing your rig. So you've done all that hard work only to slide your float up and your rig pigtails. The other thing about having it like that on your wire stem float as well is the majority of the time you actually bend your wire is not when you're fishing, it's when you're moving your flow. When you move it up from the body, so I'll put my silicone on this float and that way I can show you. So again, just by wetting it, just take your time. Another little thing as well, which I want to quickly touch on whilst we're making a new flow. So this flow is an old flow. I'm just putting new silicone on it. So whatever float I get, wherever I get it from, I'll just grab a float and show you. So I'll just slide me a bit of silicone on, sort of leave it about an inch down from the body. You don't want it right up next to the body, sort of an inch down from the body. And that way, line's less likely to bed in. So what I'm going to do is put our second bit of silicone on, and then I'll do the other bit separately once I've got this. So you'll be able to see it's quite tight. It's taking me a bit of time to put it on, but that's what I want. I don't want it like ridiculously tight, but because this silicone's nice and soft, it's not going to damage your main line. Now, if I put that bottom bit of silicone on, so it's on the line there as such, you can see, when it comes to using wire floats, so now just say I want to slide my float up because I want to try and find the depth of when I'm plumbing up. So by wetting it and holding it, so if I move my body out of the way and holding it at the bottom of the float, so here, I need like a lighter top really, don't I? So like here, when I slide it, it's absolutely fine because the wire can't bend because I'm pushing it from the body where my body joins me, you know, the stem joins the body. So I can push it up that way and my wire's never going to bend. The mistake people make is if that bottom bit of silicone was actually on the float, just say I'm plumbing up and it's like, well, I'm way over depth. I want to slide it down. When you slide it down this way, like so, what will happen is if that bit of silicone is on your float, your wire will twist, and that's when you bend, to be honest, most of your wire floats. Not more often than not, it's not through fishing, it's when you go to move your flow. So that's another reason why, you know, on my wire stem floats, until I've plumbed up and I think, do you know what? That's perfect. That's a body over depth. That's where I want to be fishing. Shorten my line down, hook my rig up, and before I mark it, then what I'll do is I'll just put that last bit on. So I've got it roughly where I want it, you know, in terms of the depth. And once I've shortened my line down, and then before I hook it up, I just ship out, just double check my plumbing up. And then once it's like, yeah, I've plumbed up and I'm sort of that much as such, then I can come back, hook my rig up, mark it with a bit of Tipp-Ex, and it's absolutely perfect. But just be careful when you're moving your floats up and down when they're on your rig. So I'm just going to pop that there. I'm going to take that bit of silicone off because I actually want to tie this rig up. But here I've got a bit of sandpaper. Now, it doesn't matter if I've got a carbon float or a wire stem float. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move over a second and just grab you a wire float. I'll have some somewhere. So here I've got a wire float, and any float that I buy, it doesn't matter who it's from, I'll always do the same thing. So when I'm making it up, what'll happen is I don't know how they cut the wire or the carbon, but with all my floats, like this is quite aggressive sandpaper. This is a P80 grade, which from my decorating, I know when you got to pick this stuff up, it means you're going home with no fingerprints. So it's quite a rough sandpaper, but you can use finer sandpaper. But with my flow, I just do it at that sort of angle. And with your wire, you've got to just do it a few times. And what I do is just rub it around, and almost what you're doing is creating that bit as a point. So I'm just sort of taking any roughness or any little dinks and chips at the bottom of my wire. And with your wire float, you'll have to do it a couple of times. But when I look at it now, I can see, I know I'm not going to be able to show you this way. I can try my absolute best. But my problem is I shake like mad, so it might be better in front of me top. So there you'll be able to see there's no, it's perfectly smooth. Let me grab another wire one. And I'll see if I can show you. But sometimes, not all of the time, but sometimes the way it's chopped off, it can be quite an aggressive cut. So maybe that one. Just try my best. To be fair, they're not that bad. But sometimes when you look at the very end of it, it'd be quite aggressively cut. And that that's what's gonna, you know, you have it sometimes when you go slide your float and your stem just goes straight through the silicone, and you think, nah, I don't like that. If you do what I've just done there and rub it to a point, and then once you've rubbed it to a point as such, then just square your sandpaper off and just gently flatten it off. And you'll know once you've done it enough, because when you push it on your finger, it's a point, but it's not like needle point. You know, you can pop your finger on it like that. You know, I'm hitting it quite hard, and it's not puncturing my skin. And if it still feels just a little bit too sharp, just rub it a couple of times. That way, now the end of that is so smooth and there's no dinks in it. You know, you're not going to lose any of your flow. You might lose a mill of your flow. But that way, you know, when you go to put your silicone on, it's not going to damage your silicone. And more important, it's not going to ever damage your main line. What you've got to think is, like, when floats are getting, you know, mass produced as such, even from when you get them from, like, you know, somebody like Rich, or, you know, a one-person float maker as such, when they're making them, you know, they're still cutting lots of bits of wire and lots of bits of carbon, and they ain't going to be able to sit there and just make sure everyone's perfect. You know, the fact that you're getting a good flow to start with, but just that extra little bit of care at the bottom of your flow can make a big, big difference. Now, I do exactly the same thing when it comes to my carbon float. So I'll show you here. So I touched on it earlier. I want my floats longer because I'd rather shorten it down for my needs. We all know I'm a bit, not anal, but yeah, a few of you are going to say, yeah, you are. So what I do is, once I've found my flow and I think, you know, I do one to start with, and I'll fish with it, see how I get on. And if I think, yeah, that's absolutely perfect, I'm really, really happy with the length of that flow. So here, this one, you know, I want to shorten it down. So by putting the float that I'm happy with next to, you know, all my other ones, and then just butt the stems of the float up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it, but I'm going to cut it probably 2 mil longer than I want it to be. So I'm going to cut it literally 2 mil longer than I want it. So here's me. Let me see if I can get my body out of the way. So here's me one that's good. You'll be able to see I've sanded that down. So that's really, really nice. Now, the one that I've cut, obviously, it's going to be worse. Your float's probably never come that bad. Let me see if I can put it down. Right. See how it's sort of flat now. So again, but with your carbon, because carbon's a lot softer than wire, you use your sandpaper, you just don't need to do it as much. So again, that same angle, you know, rubbing it at that sort of angle onto your stem, not like that, just like that sort of angle. Again, just rubbing it around, getting it to come to a point, a lot softer with your carbon, because it's just a lot softer material. When I'm happy with it, you know, just take the end off the point. So it's just it's like a dome. That's the way I'd sort of describe it. It's not a point, it's sort of a domed finish. So now with that one, it's absolutely spot on. But I need to get something done in future just to stab it in. It's like, yeah, you know, that's going to sit dead still. So little things like that, you know, just that little bit of extra care and attention. But again, when it comes to, you know, what I was saying, it's very, very rare I have to replace my silicone. That's why, just that extra little bit of care. And it's all them little bits of confidence that I know when I hook a big fish that I've moved my flow and it's not, you know, it's never going to damage my main line. And at the end of the day, you know, in fishing, nothing's really cheap. Any float now is like £2 to £2.50. You know, it's a lot of money. So just by taking that little bit of extra care on your behalf, just make them last a bit longer. So what I'm going to do is I put our float on. I put, obviously, this is new silicone. I'll just explain. So just slide it up. Just check my line. I know that it's not burnt. You know, and if it's, when you are doing a new float, sometimes with your carbon flows, one tip is whenever I'm making a new carbon float, what I'll do is I use some of this stuff just that liquid, you know, a few tackle companies sell it, but just get some of that, and then I'll spray it on my table, a bit of kitchen roll. I've always got, say, if I'd showed you over there, it looks an absolute mess, but I know where everything is, and then a bit of kitchen roll. And when I'm tying a new carbon flow, with wire, when you put your silicone on, when you slide it, as long as you wet it with saliva, it slide absolutely fine. It never seems to create any friction on your line. Whereas when you're using a new carbon flow, just by putting a bit of that on the table, but instead of using your own saliva to slide the flow, I just put a bit of that on the table, and then when it comes to me sliding my flow, I just dip my finger in it, wipe it, and just slide it up. And what that does is just get a bit of this liquid underneath your silicone, sort of, so you've got like your silicone there and your carbon, obviously it's going to be dead tight, but it sort of lubricates the inside of the silicone, and that way when you slide it, there's no friction. And as long as you're, again, touching on the silicone that I like to use, I want it to be not ridiculously tight, but not loose, but I want it to be tight enough that it's not just going to move dead easy. So I find just by using a bit of that, squirting on the table, wiping it, you know, and once you've slid your float on once, and then it just undo a bit more, again, a bit of that, and just slide it up, and you'll be able to look at your line. It hangs absolutely perfect. What you want to avoid is that, because then you know that that's the friction that's basically done that on your line. So again, another little simple thing, but it's well worth it. And that's why I like trying to keep the silicone on, because once I've used my float a couple of times and the silicone has sort of expanded around the stem of the flow, the next time you go to use it, you won't have to use that. It just slide absolutely fine. So I'm just going to slide this up a little bit. But you'll be able to see, because I've got that end bit of silicone not on, I don't have to worry about bending my float. You know, I can move it around as much as I want. So I don't think I've got that bit right. So just slide him up. So go and make a nice loop. Make sure it's not twisted as well, your line. And then with your loop tire, it's outside, inside. So you're really going to struggle to see that. So once I make my loop, so I get my line, fold it back on itself like so. So I've got one big loop, and then I pinch it together so that the loop's in this finger, twist it once and pinch it. And then I've got like my double bit of loop, and then the one bit of, you know, your single bit of loop. And then with me outside, inside. So that's the, you know, the double bits. That goes on the outside, twist it once, put your finger there to hold it in place, and then put that on the inside and just gently pull it down like so. And then pull it that way as such. And what's nice about that, and again, just double check your knot all of the time. So make sure that your knot is not bumped. You know, it should all look nice and smooth. So go and just pull it tight and just hold it for a second or two. And then when I trim it off, just try and leave it like a mil longer than what I want it to. So again, I'll just pop that down. Now I know with this one, it's 6, 13 and 22. So my first shot, I pop on roughly about 6 inch. So these are going to be my 2 droppers. So just use a little pair of flat pliers. Just get them from Hobbycraft. They're cheap as chips, to be honest, and they definitely save your teeth. One thing that I wish I'd have used sort of years ago, if that makes sense. So I put that over. That one's at 6 inch. I want my rig under a bit of tension, but not too much, you know. So I'm just going to slide my flow and my bit of silicone so I can see on my thing I've got my 22 inch. So here at 13 inch, I've just got my second dropper. So pop that on, just slide it down. Again, like anything, you know, bait. Oh, I don't know what I've done there. I haven't put my bulk on. It's 13. So, and then my number 8 at 22 inches. So pop that one on. what I was going to say is with your shots and your cubes, it's just like bait. You get some really, really well-made shot at times. It's like anything that's mass-produced. You get good batches and bad batches. And what I like to do is once I've found anything that's good, I try and buy enough to the point where I almost never have to worry about it for as long as I live. So that's why I've just got all my stuff in little tubs like that. So now I've got my 2 droppers and I've got my bulk. When it comes to making your bulk, when you've got good shot and they're all cut really, really nice and central, when you line your shot up with your splits, they will all lie so nice. And I just try and have the tiniest little gap. I used to sort of try and get it touching. The problem is when it touches, it always sort of doesn't lie straight. Just by having it, I can move my head out of the way, just a little bit apart, just so there's a little bit of movement in between the shot. You'll find that doing it that way, all your bulks sit really, really nicely. So again, have me a bit of weight on there. And then I'm just going to slowly sort of build my bulk. Again, I don't rush, I just take my time. And once I'm lying my shot on my finger and I'm looking at it next to the other shot, I'm looking and thinking, is that shot nice and straight? Does it look, you know, well made? And if I'm happy with it, then I put it on with my pliers. If I look at it and think, I don't like the look of it, it's one shot. It probably costs like, I don't know how much of a penny, not a lot. But if it doesn't look right on my line, I will I'll just throw it in the bin. Now again, you're checking with your bits. And I just think when you just give everything that little bit more care and attention, you know, it's not a race at the end of the day. And you want it to be as good as you can be. And I think just by having that little bit of extra care and attention that you do with your gear, it'll transfer into everything that you do. So at the moment, to be fair, these shots are really nice, really, really well made. Everyone's seams really, really nicely cut. So again, 1 minute, let me just double check. I'm sure I put 8 on, I did. So you'll be able to see there with my bulk, if I can hold it still. See how nice it is? Just lies absolutely perfect. Just sits so nice and straight. And I know with this float, again with all my floats as such, I know how much shot it takes to get it from the point from, basically if I put that in a shotting tube now, it'd go to where almost like my bristle joins my body, maybe just on my bristle a little bit. And then what I do is just with my number 12 cubes, I use number 12s on this because the bristle's quite long. It's a, you know, fiberglass bristle. But if I was using like quite a small bristle and the float didn't take a lot of shot, instead of using number 12s, I just use number 13s. Because I don't, to be honest, like using bristle grease. I'd much rather use it with shot like that. Because then if the float sits a little bit too low, I can just take one of my number 12s off and it'd come out, but it'd stay that way. Whereas when you're starting to use grease, I do have it with me. More if it's when I'm fishing like a tiny, tiny, light little flow, and I just want the tip of my flow more in the winter time, I just literally dob the end of my float. And when I say the end, I mean literally like a mil or two of the flow. Because what can happen with your grease is you're putting something on that's going to change. So if you put it on your float, it can obviously rub off your float. So with that, you're never really in control of how your float's going to sit. Whereas if you use, you know, them little tiny trimming shot, you're in control of how your float sits. So that's that rig tied. So just with my staples, I just take, you know, one off my little staple thing. So I've got our staple. And then what I do is I just bend it down, not so it's touching. So let me see if I can hold it with my pliers, just so you might be able to see a bit better. So my fingers are not in the way. So you can see, yeah, that looks perfect actually, to be fair there. So to the right hand side of it, that's where my line's going to go, and that bit is going to go, that side's going to go on my winder. It's something that I spotted from Des years ago, and it's something that I've always done, because your loops, when you take it off your winder, your loops always hang lovely and straight. Now, again, when it comes to putting it on the winder, depending on what winders you've got, but I've had these Reeve ones forever, and I'll never change, to be honest, because I've never rigged all my rigs. I'm never putting them on new winders ever. But what you find with when you start to use bigger flows, like the hook there is at the, let me put this rig down so I can show you. But the hook there is at the top. But when you look at the winder, it's quite thin this side where that peg is, but it's a lot thicker this side. So what I like to do with me bigger bodied flows is I put it on the rig basically backwards, so that way when I put it that way you can't see the body of the flow. Now if I put it that way, you'd be able to see the body of the flow stick out. Now with that, it doesn't matter, the body of the flow, wherever it goes, it can't get damaged because it's tucked in the winder, if that makes sense. So you see there, the winder's covering the body of the flow, whereas if I put it this side, the side that it's probably meant to be, I'm going to get a bulbous side of obviously see the body of my flow. I don't want that, because if it happens to get knocked, you know, I'm going to flatten the body of the flow. So with me bigger flows, with my smaller floats like so, you'll be able to see there's my two floats on that winder. But when you look at it like that, you can't see my float. So again, they're never going to get damaged, my floats. When I'm starting to use bigger floats, I could easily put two of these floats on that winder. But when I'm starting to use my bigger body floats, I just put one on it and actually put it on backwards. So instead of having it that way around and you start there and work that way, I just turn it upside down. Again, it's a simple thing, but you think about it, we've taken that much care in our flow, you know, making sure our float spins straight to start with, you know, rubbing the bottom of our stem to make sure that's not going to damage my main line, not going to puncture my silicone. With this flow, I actually paint the bristle because I see it better. With a bit of sensors paint, I see it a lot better. So I've done all of that only to just whop it on my winder. Accidents happen, and then I end up you know, breaking my flow, and you don't want that. So again, put it around. Again, before you move your flows, just give them a bit of a wet. Just slide it up a bit. Now, normally with these floats, I do 7 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5. Because I'm going to be using a gold, and I know that's long enough. But instead of and then I pop it there. So instead of, you know, tying my loop, all I do is I just make a loop basically the same length as the winder, not longer than the winder and not too short, because I don't want my rig to be under too much tension. And just tie one overhand knot like so. I'll do it up here. I've got a habit of doing everything on my leg. And then, again, I just cut it so I've got a couple of mil, and then loop that over there, pop my tag end away, and then just make sure that everything's nice. Again, that little bit of care. And then that's my Gloucester tied up. I stop shaking so much. You know, see my bulk, see my little staple, that's well out of the way. So that's never going to damage any of my rig because it's out of the way, if that makes sense. Just make sure it's nice and straight on my winder. But again, the biggest thing is my float can't get damaged because it's in my winder. So there, those two sorted. Oh, knocking my shots everywhere. So what I'll do Let me just see if I can get. There we are. Yes, I have done that before and dropped them everywhere. What's it? 52 car pickup. It's about 8 million pickup when you do that. So that's why as soon as I finish using them, I want to get them lids on as soon as possible. So I can pop them out of the way now. So that's the R1 rig. Have a little bit of a tidy up, and then we can move on to if we've got any more questions. So it's from Jonathan. So this from Daz Kennedy. Do you use any additives in the cooler months, i.e. on your micros and expanders? Personally, no. The problem is with additives is, I don't know, you ask some people and they use them and they're absolutely sold on them. One thing I will say is I use this shrimp liquid in my paste, and I think that made a big difference because it's sort of a big smelly bait. But the whole nature of paste is when they're coming in, they're gill feeding, they're ripping the bottom up. It's more of a smell, taste for them to find that old bait and suck it in. On my micros and expanders, I don't. For the reason being, I just think that it's a bit like the fish like what they like. So if I bought, I don't know, if I bought you a nice ribeye steak and I put salt on it, that'd probably taste quite nice. Like peppercorn sauce, again, that's quite nice additive. But everyone's different. Some people like blue cheese sauce. I don't like strong cheese, so I definitely wouldn't eat that. Beef dripping, I'd drink 8 pints of that, and I'm sure most people would. But one thing I wouldn't want is it tasting of a strawberry or a coconut or, Scopex. But you listen to some people and they're sold on it. But I think when you're using an additive, I think what's more important with it is the fact that it gives you confidence. So if you're confident, you think, right, if there's any fish there, I'm going to empty it on this because I've caught loads on it. I think it actually, in my mind, it probably does more for the angler in terms of give them confidence. I just think that when fish want to eat pellets, they want to eat pellets. So just feed them pellets. You can use, again, you could use additives maybe on your expanders to try and stiffen them up a bit. But no, just try and find good expanders. It's a difficult one because there's some brilliant anglers out there that absolutely swear by it, and they wouldn't fish without them. But personally, no, I don't. But you could ask someone else and they do. So I think it's very much what you like and what you're confident in. That's what I would say with that. But no, when I'm fishing with micros and expanders, I'm fishing for F1s. A lot of the time when you're fishing with micros and expanders, the reason you're fishing with micros and expanders rather than maggots is because a lot of the time they're relatively new fish. They like eating pellets because that's what they were reared on. So no, personally, I don't. And I think, again, there's no one that I look up to that I think, they use, like, Andy's probably the best. Well, he is the best without doubt when it comes to, micros and expanders, fishing for F1s. He uses a 4 mil expander and micros, that's it, and don't use anything else. And if it's good enough for him type thing, it's good enough for me. But again, he might be the type, just say he was the type of person that believed in additives. And he said, I've got to have a Scopex flavouring on my micros and my expanders. And that's what he used. And that's what we'd all use then. So do you see what I mean? It all depends on the person, if that makes sense. But personally, I've never had it where I felt like I need to get better at this to be able to catch more. And again, everyone that I know in my little circle as such that fishes with micros and expanders, and they're all really, really good. So you've got Andy, Christian, Matty Dawes, really, really good F1 anglers that I know and speak to regularly. None of them use it, so I don't. But again, if they did use it, we'd probably be having a different conversation now. I'd be saying, yes, I've got to use it for that reason as such. So I don't think why you wouldn't catch. But I think the problem is when you start going down an additive, you're opening an Aladdin's cave. So just say you Scopex, caught a few fish on it, then you had one match, you'd be thinking, oh, is that additive too sweet? Or, you know, and then you'd end up trying this and trying that. And if you walked into the carp aisle of a tackle shop, you could spend the rest of your life trying them all, because every week there seems to be a new one coming out. So personally, no, I don't use them, but I'm not saying that they don't work. I just think it's a minefield for me. And I just think the way I look at it is, in my food, if I order steak, I want steak. I don't want, you know, a strawberry flan. If I wanted that, then I would have ordered that. And I think sometimes it's more to catch us, you know, rather than to catch the fish. So hopefully that helps, Daz. But if you catch a load, let me know. So hopefully that helps. And then Joe Farley's put, have you used the number 3 dibbers from RW? I haven't at the moment, to be honest. I think they'd be brilliant for like carp, but again, I don't really do a lot of it. I want to do a bit more this year, but when I'm fishing for carp, I really like Richie sells like a bigger carp slapper, and I really like that. But no, I'll definitely be grabbing a few. And I know that Rich has made, after Christian emptied it at where is it now? Westwood, used a solid plastic bristled dink and caught a load, and he's absolutely sold on it. So I am awaiting delivery of those, because again, you know, when you get a good angler and they're absolutely adamant it made a massive difference. So again, keep an eye out for those, because I know that Rich is making a few at the moment. So, but no, I will do, Joe, definitely. So this from Timothy. Yes, Paul, love watching you. It makes sense. So thanks, Timothy. So hi as well. And then Paul Holland, yeah, I've got one of me. One for the little people, Paul. Have you made any decisions on pole elastics yet? Hollow versus hybrid. I have, Paul. I've done it on our Match Focus website. And again, I think a lot of it is personal preference. Personally, I've used Hydro for so long, I know what I can do with it. And I wasn't a big fan, truthfully, of using the hybrid when I did use it. I just felt that the ones that I stuck to, the Dial one, it never come out of my top kits, and it just juddered like mad. Now, it might have just been the one that I had, but I didn't like it. And I use this lubricant stuff for my rig tying. So when I'm tying my elastics and tying my knots, you know, my knot for my bead, I'll squirt a bit on the table to be able to tie my knot if I want to move shots on my pellet rig. So I'll put them all on, but because I want to slide them on my line, I'll just put some of that on, rub it on my bulk, slide it up the line, again, get some of that under your shocks. It stops the friction, but I don't want to be putting that down with pole, because what'll happen is when you spray some on your table and leave it for, you know, a bit of time, and just come back and it's just clacked. It's just anything that's liquid is going to dry, and it's, for me, it just clags up your top kits. The best elastic in terms of my top kits, when my elastic works perfect, is when you've got a brand new top kit, when there's no clag inside it. It just works so smooth. So just by using it with water, I've never had a problem with it. So with me elastics, if they judder and stuff, there's no reason why it should, because all my top kits were brand new when I was doing this. And I don't and will not put stuff like that down my top kit. If it doesn't work with water, I won't use it. As simple as that. But I found that, so the Dar one I wasn't keen on, to be honest, and I'd done 3 top kits and everyone juddered, and I just didn't like it, to be honest. And don't get me wrong, when I hooked to fish, playing it felt all right, but it just, compared to Hydro that strikes lovely, you know, and just works beautiful, nah, I don't want to have to use something because of that. But again, it's personal. That's the one time I used it. You know, the next time I might have used it, it might have been absolutely fine. It might have just been the one that I've got. Everything's made in batches. Sometimes they're brilliant. Sometimes they're not so good. You know, I've had Hydro that, you know, I'm not saying that Hydro is absolutely perfect every single time, because again, it's mass produced. Sometimes I've had blues, you know, that are on the thin side, some that are maybe slightly on the thicker side. I'm not just saying that one product's not good by any means, you know, but anything that's made in a batch, you get just like shots, just like anything, you know. So the Dar one, that would say I didn't like it because it didn't come out with pole tip nice, and there was no reason why that it shouldn't have come out, so I didn't use that one. And then I used the Preston one, and I found that there's no, so I would say the 9 hollow felt like yellow hydro to me. The 11 felt like, I want to try and say, it felt like a pinky orange, equivalent to what I'm used to using. That's what it felt to me like. So the 7, that's like a yellow hydro. The 9 felt like a pinky, maybe pinky orangey sort of stretching. And then the next step up, which was 13, that felt like grey black hydro. So the jump was ridiculous, you know, from like a pink orange to what's stronger than grey hydro, you know, almost verging on black, really, in terms of the way that it powers up. You ain't got a lot of choice. So when I want to use a blue hydro equivalent, blue white, that there ain't nothing there. There's nothing to use. So it's a bit, I didn't like it. What I like about hydro is there is a definition between each one you pick. If you use yellow, which is the lightest, it's definitely the lightest. But when you use pink, it's stronger than the yellow, but it's not as strong as an orange or a blue. Blue and orange, I'd say orange was slightly stronger than blue, to be honest, because orange has got, I think, don't quote me on this, I might be wrong, but I think normal hydro stretches at, say, a 1 to 12, whereas I think black and orange stretch at like a 1 to 7. I'm sure it definitely stretches less. So yellow, then I've got pink, and then I've got my bluey oranges, then I've got white, then I've got grey, then I've got black, then you've got purple, and then you've got red. Yeah, you've got brown, but no, I don't. If there's a peg like that where I've got to use that, I'm too little. I'm going to be water ski. They will literally water ski me if I had to use that. But what I like about it is every elastic that I use, if blue's too harsh, I go to pink. If pink's too strong, I go to yellow. If yellow's too low, I go to pink. If pink's too low, I go to blue. Blue's not quite strong enough for orange. I've got white. Again, from white, then I've got grey, and then I've got black. So I've got a lot of variation in with the elastic that I use. The only downside, and this is what I said when I done me like analogy on it, the only downside of hydro is the price. If it was 7-8 quid like every other elastic, we'd never have this conversation, because in my opinion, you'd never use anything else. But there is definitely a place for it. So when I went to Lindholm, and it's solid, the one thing I will say about hybrid elastics is they're a lot lighter in your top kits. So that's one plus for it. Obviously the price, that's another massive plus for it. But one thing I will say is when I'm going to be going to, say, Lindholm in the future, like this July, when I'm doing that style of fishing wear, or when I go to, say, Munkle Fish Festival there, where it's absolute bagging, I will put some 13 Duraslip in my top kits, because again, 2 anglers that I really, really rate, Matty Dawes and Christian, they're sold on it. So when you go out, you slap your rig and you hook one, and it's, you know, a big F1, and you're on bagging mode. So you go out, hook a fish, ship out, you want one pull, lift up, net the fish, get back out, which is what Lindholm and Munkle is about, because there's just, you know, a ton of fish in there. You've got to be geared up right. I would think that, again, from watching them and looking at their results and speaking to them, they're absolutely sold on it. I will definitely try it again, but I genuinely think that's probably the only one where I feel like that will come into my fishing. So hopefully that helps answer your question, Paul. And then Daz has put, cheers, mate. Personally, I don't. Again, Daz, you know, I'm not saying I'm, you know, because you've got people like Steve that are adamant of using, you know, additives and flavorings and stuff like that. And maybe if you're chucking a hybrid out fishing for 5 bites, you know, that it might make a difference in that scenario. But again, I don't do that enough to know. But yeah, each to their own, really. You know, it's what basically I think it's more what you've got confidence in. And if it gives, I think the most important thing in fishing is being confident. And if it gives you that confidence and that belief, it's almost worth using it, just because you'll be sat there thinking, if they're there, I'm going to be catching them. And I think when you're confident in something, what happens is you give it the time to develop naturally. Whereas when you're not confident in something, you try it and you think, nah, this is rubbish. I'm not going to catch. So you change. And I think that's what additives, you know, an advantage in my mind, would definitely give you. So our last one at the moment is from Anthony. Hydro is definitely the best for me, mate. Yeah, I agree. It's the only downside is the cost. But it's just one of them, you know. That's just I think it's the same as anything, you know. You definitely do get what you pay for. And what I will say as well, what I like about my Hydro, it's like in my bag of bits here. So once I've you know, taken some elastic out of my long kits, for argument's sake, I just keep them. So here's one out of my long kit. Still got me bead on it from, you know, my long kit. So it's been used to death in my long kit as such. And then what I'll do is I'll put that in my short kit now, and I just retie my knot at that end. So I slide my bead up as such, and then retie my loop at the bottom of my elastic, thread it in my short kit, and then I use it in that. So that's the other thing. I think, and I've always had this opinion, most other elastics go from 100%. So when you put them in your top kit, they're at 100%. They're at the best they're ever going to be. And once you've used it and got it bedded in, it's going to be brilliant. 100%. That's the best that elastic is ever going to be from that point, and it's only ever going to get worse. Personally, I think with Hydro, it takes a couple of uses to get bedded in, and it almost gets better with age. Once it's been broken in and softened up a little bit, it almost gets better with age. And again, I like it because it's really durable. It lasts, so I can use, you know, like all me out of me long kits. So once I've gone to White Acres, I'll have some like pink in my long kits for Jenny's, and then some whites, greys, you know, some blues, a lot more carpy fishing there. And then if I'm not doing that for a bit, I just take it out of my long kits, pop it in my short kits, and it's perfect. So that's another thing what I like about it. But again, it's, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say that. I just think everything is what you like. I think that's a big, big thing. I think that's more important than anything else. And I always try and say, this is what I like. But if you like something else and you've got confidence in it, that's what's right for you. That's the most important bit. I just think that, and I know I've done this in the past where, you know, somebody uses this and I think, oh no, I've got to use that because such and such is using it. It's what they like using, it's what they've got confidence in. I think as long as, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what my motto is. I'm a nightmare, to be honest, at changing, because once I like something, I like it. And more often than not, I'm behind everyone else because I'm still using what I like using. And it's only when a few anglers say to me, Paul, you're missing a trick here. Like, I'll tell you, one of the best ones was using what I'm absolutely sold on now is the Kaizen. So before that hook, I used, it was what hook was it now? It was a Corum S3 hook. And I was just sold on them. Absolutely sold for like fishing with dead maggots. And Adam Rooney said, Paul, you need to try these Kaizen hooks because you will, I know what you like, you will absolutely adore them. They're unbelievable for what you want for your method feeder fishing. You will not find a better hook for that. They are the sharpest hook. And I was a bit like, nah. I just want to, because it's like, well, I'm changing something with this. I know what I've got because I've got all of that experience. And again, all of that confidence of fishing when you're playing a big fish underneath your feet and nothing happens and you net the fish. I'm a bit, no, I don't want to use it. So I didn't use them for a long time. And then when Penn was still with Guru, he said to me, Paul, you've got to try these Kaizens, mate. They're unbelievable. And it's a bit like Pem's a bit like me, likes what he likes. And I trust Pem a lot. You know, I fish with him for, you know, since, well, I ain't really grown up much, but in terms of age, I fish with him a lot. And I'd go as far as saying that I've never had a recommendation of anything from Pem that wasn't a lot better. And I thought, Ads has said it to me, goes feeder fishing a lot. So, you know, he's going to know. But when Pem said to me about it, I thought, I've got to try it now because that's 2 people. So I went out, tied them up, tried them, and I was like, oh my days, like this is just a joke of a hook. Like they're so sharp, they are ridiculous. Now, I wouldn't ever use anything else, but it's probably like, I'm going to say probably a year. It's got to have been a year, maybe even over a year, because like the prototype hooks that come in before they're mass produced, I'm fortunate that I can nick a few if I want to. And I just completely dismissed it. And I'm like that too much, to be honest. But again, I think sometimes having that ultimate trust and that ultimate belief in what you're doing, you know, I definitely think you can change onto the next latest and greatest thing all of the time. And you can do that too much. I'm too stubborn at times, you know, but I think once you've got that confidence and that belief in something, whether, as long as you think it's very, very good. So when you're sat down, you've got no, you know, you've got that confidence in your mind and you're happy and you're confident. I think that is really, really important in fishing. So again, if you like something, you know, stick to that. If it's not broke, don't try and fix it. So that's one thing I will say. So our next one is from Marine Fish. Confidence is key. 1,000,000%. You've got to be confident in what you're doing, you know. And by all means, if something comes out and you think, oh, you know, that might fit in my fishing a bit, go out and have a bit of a practice with it, you know, before you put it into your before you start using it in your matches. I think that's really, really important, that, you know, gain that little bit of confidence and that little bit of belief with it. And then you can analyze it compared to what you was using, and what, you know, when it doesn't matter, when you're pleasure fishing, you know, go out for a pleasure, you know, when you start catching a few on what you was using, then give it a try and see how you get on with it. Like, I'll give you a perfect example with that. So I'm always trying like new feeders and different feeders, and you hear, you know, good anglers like, again, I watch everyone, you know. So I know that Des, when we were going to Cornwall, was probably, I don't know, was it 2 years? It's hard to remember in terms of the times because we had COVID and stuff like that. But he was catching a lot of fish using a pellet feeder. And I actually went down on Tree Waters with Russ Grimes that day because he wanted to do a bit of sort of caster shallow fish. And I said, I'll tell you what, we go Tree Waters because we're sort of out of the way. And I want to have a go with these pellet feeders because, like, I know that, like, Des is catching a lot of fish on it. Not just Des, but a lot of other good anglers. And I thought, I need to have a go with these. Give myself a bit of confidence using it. So we've gone down, fishing my little pellet feeder across. And there was the local lads. There was Steve Prowse. Again, this is why Tree Waters it was, because there was Steve Prowse. I think definitely Steve Prowse, he was one. John Cook, and he was fishing... What was it? It was sort of like the Garbolino one, I think, where it's sort of just on Tree Waters and Twin Oaks. And they were catching really, really well, fishing like a little pellet feeder, tiny little pop-ups and expanders were like, and like these little sort of pellety coloured wafters. So I'd got all of that sorted out to go and have a practice, and sort of popping your bait up just a little bit off the bottom with a couple of number 8 cubes, like a tiny little lug, like a little 14 QM1. And I'm thinking, like, they're catching loads of fish. I need to try this. So I've gone down there, fishing away. I'm catching an odd and doing it. And it's like, do you know what? I'm just going to have a go on how I would normally fish. I've wound it in, bit my pellet feeder off, threaded my little 30-gram Guru on, my little, so it's dead free running like I normally have it, 018 and a 14 Kaizen, 3 red maggots. So I've loaded my method up, chucked it to the island, held the line, caught one, little carp, chucked it out again, holding the line, no bites, got it on my rest. 2 minutes later, it was gone round, caught another carp. Chucked it out again, holding the line, missed it. Chucked it out again, holding the line, no bites, got it on my rest. 2 minutes, gone round, caught one. Chucked it out again, holding my line, dragged in, picked it up, caught one. I wound it in, and I got my pellet feeders, put them in my carryall, and that's it. They've never been used since. So what I'm saying is like, you know, there's good anglers, and because they're confident in it, they make it work. And don't get me wrong, I caught a few on it, but as soon as I went back to what I was confident in, where I know, because I've been in that situation so many times, I know when to cast, how often to cast, I know how to load my feeder up, I know how to do it best with ground bait, where to put my bait in the feeder. I just, when I went back to what I already knew, one, I was confident, and if the fish are there, you catch them how you want, but it's confidence. That's the most important thing. And again, I've tried a pellet feeder since, and I've tried other, you know, smaller feeders, slightly different ones. I just go back to that because it works for me and I'm confident in it. So other people, they'd have that same belief that I've got in my method feeder, the way that, you know, I like doing it. And it's forever trying to tweak what you like. So one thing that I definitely changed, or that I changed, that's made a massive difference to me method feeder fishing, is, let me go and grab it because I want to show this. So this is my feeder box. Straight out my Carol, this one I take feeder fishing with me. So in here, I've got my bait up feeders, 4 Bellingee, and then I've got me 36 gram with a long stem, and then I've got me 30 gram with a long stem. That's it. They're my 2 feeders. That's all I've got. They're literally the only feeders that I've got in my box. That one, 36 gram, when I'm chucking a long way, or want to feed a bit of bait, I use that feeder. But for 99.99999% of my feeder method, I use a 30 gram feeder with a long stem. And that's the key to it. As soon as I change to a long stem, I always think that I don't even think I haven't got any short stems in here. They're all longer ones. You know, they're just an elasticated stem that just take the elastic out. And again, I prefer an elastic stem rather than a free running stem. It's not to say that, you know, that one's right, but this one's right for me. I like that. You know, it goes in my feeder nicely. I love the fact of the top, you know, and the fact that I have it free running, that, you know, the little bit that comes on the top of it, I haven't got any because I don't use elastic. But a long stem, I always felt that my casting was all right. You know, don't get me wrong, the more you do it, the better you get at anything. But I'd have always said, I'm happy. I'm happy with my casting, you know. I think everything, you're never going to be the best, because when you can never say, do you know what, my casting is unbelievable, it can't be better, because I know that in a year's time I'm going to be better then than I am now at it. So I'm happy with it. But when I change from the normal, like, elasticated stem to the long stem, even when I'm not chucking very far, my casting improved, I'm going to say 50% on my accuracy. So again, that confidence, when you've got like a little hole that you want to be chucking it in, now I think I can't miss. And having that belief when you go, you know, when you're going to cast out, and the biggest difference is nothing to do with my technique, because I feel like my technique's been the way that it has been for a long time. But instead of using, you know, a small stem, let's see if I've got, I might have a, yeah, I've got a small stem here. I've got to be careful because I've got some feeders in here that you're not allowed to see. So I've got some smaller stems, you know, which the feeder actually comes with. But the difference between using that stem, let me get my 30 gram feeder out. Where is it? So your feeder will come like so, with that stem, like that. That's how it'll come. Let me see if I've got another one. I should have. Yeah, I've got another 30 gram here. Put me a long stem in. So it's the same feeder, if I hold them the same level as such. But the difference between using that one and that one, in terms of your accuracy, you wouldn't believe it. And I tell you the other thing as well, when it comes to, like, you know, in your mold, and you're popping it out of your mold, because the stem's longer, it's so much easier to be able to handle your feeder as well. But I would say my accuracy improved 50% when I changed my stem. So again, it's the little things, and you know what I was saying before about confidence in something, because I'm confident in it and I know this is for me. Nah, this is the one. You know, every time I change something, I end up just giving the stuff away, or it's in a box in here that I'm probably never going to use again. But if I can improve what works for me, that's the bit. Then that's what I'm trying to focus on. I've narrowed it down to what I like using, and then just try and tweak those little bits. But so yeah, when it comes to your feeders, honestly, if you don't use a longer stem, even when I'm on, you know, I'm just trying to think of the narrowest chuck. Where would it be? Anywhere, you know, say if we went to Todbert Ash, that's not a far chuck. Twin Oaks, Trelawney, that Trelawney's probably even narrower. Even when I've got a tiny, tiny little dinky chuck, using that long stem makes a massive, massive difference to your accuracy. So little tip there, definitely give that one a go. So this one's from Sean. Tried most of the hybrid and they're not for me. Hybrid's gone back for me, gone back to hydro. I think that's the thing, you know, it's, you got to give it a go and see what it's like, you know. Some people, they absolutely swear by it. They just never use anything else. And again, if they're confident in it and it works for them, that's the most important thing. When you sat down in a match, you know, competitive environment, you can sit down and feel like, I'm happy with this, I'm happy with that, I've got my bait sorted, you know. However you do your bait, like me with my ground bait as such, you know, when I'm happy and I'm confident, I just think, yep, I'm happy. You're going to be an hard man to beat because you're confident, you know. And again, when it comes to like the prep side of it, that's why I wanted to start doing an odd one of these. Like a lot of people, they see this as a chore. I don't see it as a chore because I know when I sit down and I think anything that I might need, I've got. I ain't going to run out of hooks. I've got plenty of rigs tied, all my gear's clean, it's all tidy. If I happen to draw well today, it's all down to me, my fishing, you know, decision making. As long as I can just be focusing on that, you're always just trying to give yourself the extra little bit, you know, trying to make yourself harder to beat at the end of the day. You know, we're all competitive. We all want to do well. Unfortunately, in fishing, it's not fair. It never will be fair. There'll be times when you're not the best angler on the bank and you'll absolutely empty it and win the match. And there'll be times when you are the best on the bank and you won't win. So got to take your luck as and when it just so happens, you know. I think in fishing, to win, you need to draw a peg capable of winning. That's step one, definitely. Whatever the required weight of winning that day is, you need to draw a peg to give yourself the opportunity of that. But then you still got to do all the bits right. You know, you still got to fish well, you still got to make the right decisions. Still got to be, you know, prepared for everything and every eventuality. So you definitely still got to do things right. But I just feel that, you know, just spending that little bit of extra time and care and attention to detail when you're doing this bit, for me, it gives me that extra bit of confidence when I'm sat there on the bank and I think, do you know what? I've done everything that I could possibly do to give myself the best possible chance of doing well. Now, that's not to say I'm going to, you know, draw and not cock it up. We'll cock it up, you know, but that's how you learn to win as well. So you need that side of it, you know. You draw and you think, I've messed this up, I've made the wrong choice, but you've all got to do that. And whatever venue you're going to, you've got to go there, you've got to draw good pegs, mess it up. And then you don't draw so well and do something. You think, oh, that worked really well. You're starting to put them bits of the piece of the puzzle together. And I'm a massive believer that you have to learn how to win on the venue that you're going to. And like, I've been to Gold a lot, and we filmed a live match. I'm not going to go too much in detail, but basically I messed it up. I just got it all wrong. And then I went on Wednesday, and it was the first time I've been on Gold for a long, long time. And again, first 3 hours, I completely got it all wrong. But the next time I go, I've got that bit of experience as like, right, well, this worked, that worked. And then all of a sudden, you know, a few matches down the line, given the right draw, and then you do it right in terms of everything that you've learned, you know, that you feed it right, making all the right decisions, and you fish well. And then that's where you get to, you know, you're winning your section, your framing, and hopefully, you know, cherry on the cake is winning the match. But it all starts with that bit of confidence, you know. So hopefully there's a few little tips there. And then Anthony's put, as you know, Paul, I'm the same with hooks. I hate change too, but the cars and hooks are unreal, especially for pole fishing. It's weird, you know, again, Pam, Robbie Taylor, they're absolutely mad for them, you know, on the pole. But see, this is where it's that balance. So I said that I've changed and I'm sold on them for my method feeder fishing. I absolutely love them because they're razor sharp. But personally, for me pole fishing, I just love a Super LWG. They're absolutely perfect. So it's one of them. Do I change it? But and again, I know like Mikey Williams sold on them. There's a lot of brilliant anglers out there that just absolutely love Kaizens. They wouldn't use anything else. I'm a Super LWG man. I absolutely love them. I just think they're the best all-round hook. Love them. So I need to give them Kaizens a go, don't I? I tell you, the only thing that scares me is if I went to change from a Super LWG to a Kaizen, I'd probably need to take 6 months off because that's how long it'd take me to retile my gear. So, yeah, I'll stick to my Super LWGs, I think. And just thinking about that, no, I don't want to do that. And then Marines fish as per, you know, when a Kaizen goes in your finger. Oh, yeah, you do. You know, when I sit down and feel like, right, I need to tie a few Kaizens up, you just think, oh, this is going to be painful. This is going to be really, really painful. But I think that's why they're so good. You know, again, touching on that method feeder, where a lot of people think, not a lot of people, but people can think, I need, you know, like an additive or something like that to give me an advantage. I genuinely think when it comes to a method feeder or any ledgering device, you know, feeder fishing, bomb fishing, whenever you're reliant on the fish hooking itself, you know, so it picks it up, the rod goes round, more often than not it's on. I know it's probably a little bit different when you're fishing for smaller fish because they haven't got a big enough weight to be able to set the hook. You know, sometimes you get that and you need to pick up to actually set the hook. When you're fishing with them bigger fish, I think the one biggest thing that I've learned from watching, you know, the carp fishing, the quarter underwater stuff, is the one thing looking at them is they buy a hook and then sharpen it themselves. That is how sharp they want the hook. And the most important thing is the sharpness of your hook. And I think that is the absolute key when it comes to, that's the most important thing, you know. The baits, it doesn't matter if they want to eat it, they can eat as much as they want. If your hook's blunt, they're never going to hook themselves. By having literally a razor sharp hook, that's the biggest thing that I feel like I've learned from the carp boys. And it wouldn't surprise, like the second I go to hook my maggot and it pulls, that's it, new hook on. And I know people think, car, you know, that's quite expensive. You might use like, you know, 8 or 10 hooks in a day. It's £2, £2.25. If you was using QM1s and say you use 10, it's £3. How many times you get a pint of casters and sling them in afterwards? That's like £4. So that's the way that I look at it. And I think, especially like on, you know, bigger competitions, to be honest, I'm the same. If there was one person there, 8 people there, if I was fishing for £5, £10, or whatever the amount of money, and again, however prestigious, you know, and I treat an open match or a little knock up with my mates, I'm ultra competitive. And it's not necessarily about, I want to beat the fish. I don't want them getting one over on me. When I look at my rod and it goes like that, and I think, you got me. He beat me. That carp has had my knickers down. I don't like it. It's a game between me and what's in front of me. And I want to try and maximize what I can get out of my peg. And I think when you have that attitude as well, when you draw not so good, you know, when you draw middle and when you draw well, you're always going to do well because you're just trying to catch what's in front of you and maximize what you've got. So yeah, any little advantage that I feel like I can have over them little buggers, and they can be at times. I'm surprised I'm not more bored, to be honest. Like that, we've all had them days driving home like, oh, I hate fishing. Why not pick another sport that's like therapeutic and you're banging the steering wheel because you know that you just had a nightmare? Yeah, they definitely get over on us more than what we get on them. And again, looking at them underwater things, when they've And you think that's all they do as well, the carp anglers. Everything's like they tie in a rig to catch one fish. So it's not like us tying a hook, put it down, tying a hook, put it down. They're not like that. So they extra care, and then they're balancing their baits in the edge, and they flick it in, and the carp sucks it in, spits it out. Like, how many times that happened to us? Too many times. It's got to. So yeah, sharpness of the hook. That's number one priority, definitely. So where am I at? So our last one, marine fish, yeah, had this a few times, had a few this summer on KKH. I don't know what that is. KK, I don't know. And then Bob's put, Bob Wild, what size hook lengths on bombs in the winter? So let me grab my box, Bob. I can show you. Right. Got to try and squeeze in. So again, I'm not saying like anything that I say with what I'm doing as such. It's just what works for me. Don't, with whoever you listen to, whoever you speak to, don't think, well, they said that, so that's it. That's all I'm going to do. Again, find what works for you. But I'm just giving you like advice as such on what works for me, but don't think, oh, well, Paul said that, so that's all I'm going to do. Don't ever, you want to try and be the shepherd, not the sheep, if that makes sense. So the way I do it, I watch everyone and everything. I'm looking, no matter who it is, not just guru anglers like Preston sponsored anglers, Darwin sponsored, anyone, and not just even the sponsored anglers, anyone that I can watch and think, oh, I wonder what he's doing. And again, when I'm fishing, if I draw next to someone and I think he's done bloody good there, like I want to know. I'm not bothered about who it is. Try and find, all the little bits of information that you can see. And if you spotted someone, don't be afraid to go straight up and say, do you mind? Like, well done today. Do you mind if I have a look? And then ask questions like, why do you think with this then? Yeah, that seems to make a bit of sense, Sarge. And then you put that into your own fishing. At the end of the day, like, as we get better, I'm not saying the fish, they get harder to catch, but they get used to it, if that makes sense. So I think the perfect example of this that everyone can relate to is sort of ground bait in the edge. So to start with, when there was a few people feeding ground bait in the edge, it was ridiculous. Like the fish were just so easy to catch. And then what happens is more people do it. And the fish are like, hang about, I'm getting hammered on this every time I do it. So they get more cautious. So by all means, listen to what people are saying, but make your own mind up. I'm just going to have a sip of my juice. I've got some Lush juice today. Joe treating me. Fruit and barley, apple and pear. Very, very nice. I'm not a tea or a coffee man. So anyway, on to me hook lengths. Again, don't think you need this amount of hooks. One thing that I would definitely say, over preparing like I do, it's not always a positive, it can be a negative. So I'll give you a perfect example. When I was decorating and fishing wasn't my job, I'd work Monday, Tuesday, all hours God send, so I could have Wednesday off to go fishing, and again Thursday and Friday, so I try and do my week's work in 4 days. Then I come home and it's like, right, I need to prepare, because at that point I was fishing with William all of the time, and looking at it's just a different level. But it's going to be the best in the world, on the international side of it. There ain't no one to touch him, and what he does, that's how it works for him. But when it's your job and you're doing it all of the time, not necessarily just fishing matches, you're practicing, you're doing features for magazines, and then more now like media stuff all of the time, you need a lot of gear because you're doing it all of the time. The mistake that I made when I was younger was I tried to prepare like that, and then you can't do it. And all that happened is, so I go to work, come home, have mid dinner, have a shower, and then I'll be sat there preparing. and then I'd fish, and then I'd go work, and then I'd be preparing. And the problem is you just knacker yourself out. So come your day off, which is the weekend, which you're looking forward to, I'm like that. I'm just so tired because I've over prepared. So when you look at my gear, because it's my job and I'm out a lot, and again, when I go away, because if I'm there for 2 weeks, I'm on a festival for 2 weeks, and when I'm coaching as well, I don't always get loads of time. So what I like to do is tie up plenty, because that way I don't have to worry about it. I'm never going to think, oh, well, I'm fishing a match and then I'm doing my filming for our Match Focus, and then I might be coaching. I don't coach as much now, but like in the past, then I might be coaching 2 or 3 days. Then I'm fishing a match, then I'm filming. I haven't always got the time to be able to prepare. So when time's good for me and I get a bit of time to myself, I just sit down, and again, I enjoy doing it. I like doing my prep. But don't look at this and feel like you need this much, because you won't. All depends on how much you're going. And if you can do, enough for your match, like 15, 20 hooks, going to be more than enough. You're never going to use any more than that. And then, prepare them again. But the way I like to carry me hooks is like in my box. So what I've got at the top one, I've got 12-inch hook lengths. And then at the bottom one, if I can get it on camera, I've got 6 and 8-inch hook lengths. And I just find that for me bomb fishing, that's what works really, really well for me. And it's not, what was I going to say? A great way of doing it, though, like that, is probably, again, because I don't mind sitting here and tying up hook lengths, different length hook lengths as such. Because when I go to gold light, sometimes like a 6 and an 8-inch hook length can be good. And then other times a 12-inch hook length can be good, because I'm a bit, I don't know, say like the preparation side of it don't bother me one bit, but maybe just tie your hook lengths up at 12 inches. So that way you only need one lot of hook lengths as such. So you tie, say, 15 of your bomb hook lengths up. And then on the day, when you get there, tie, say 1 at 6, 1 at 8, and 1 at 12. Or if you go into a venue where like, well, 8-inch hook length works quite well here, and you've got your 15 bomb hook lengths that are all 12-inch, maybe tie 2 or 3 at 8-inch, 2 or 3 at 6-inch, and then the others at 12-inch. And then whatever's working well, just as your hook goes blunt, just take one out of your box. It only takes a few seconds to shorten it down. I just like knowing that I can clip one off, that's just the way I am. I'm going to say I've always been like that, and sitting and doing gear is, to be honest, probably one of my most enjoyable things, where everything's so busy for me. One thing that I do like about when I'm doing my prep is I'm not thinking about like the bills. I'm not thinking about me filming, like my questions or on my phone. Or what I like about it is I can just put my iPod on. I've got my music, I've got my tunes that I can listen to, and I'm just in my own little world for a couple of hours. And it's almost like that's my release from what I'd say is the real world. So I actually really, really enjoy it, because this time when I'm here, like in my own little bubble, listening to my tunes as such, I'm not thinking about anything that's going on in the real world for me. So I actually really, really enjoy doing it, but not everyone's going to be like that. And not everyone's going to have the time. I know how busy it is for everyone. So if you've only got a bit of time, and it's not like that you don't like doing prep, you just ain't got the time for it because life's so busy. I get it. You've got a family, you've got young ones, job, mortgage, everything. And then you're trying to do your bit of fishing as and when you can, and you ain't got a lot of time. Then just try and streamline it. So instead of thinking, I need 6-inch hook lengths and 8-inch hook lengths, just tie them, especially like your bomb hook lengths, just tie them at 12 inches and shorten them down on the day. That way you know that you've got enough hook lengths and you're covered. Whereas if you said I want 15, say 12-inch hook lengths, and then I want 15, 8 and 6, well, that's 45 hooks. Just have 15, and then you can just top those ones up, as you're going. So hopefully there's a little bit of help there. So that's what I like, Bob. Oh, and then Marines put Preston hooks. One thing I will say as well is I'm not going to sit here and say that you can only use one manufacturer of this. But I think again it's a confidence thing. Do you know what I mean? Like I've had some odd days where I lose a few fish. And I think sometimes it's when, you know, sometimes when the fish are not feeding well, they're the days when they can be a bit funny, you know. But again, this is why I don't like change, because, you know, if I go out and say with me Kaizens and I lose another, like, I'm never going to question that, because I know in my mind I've had far too many good days on it. And I guarantee you, and again, because that experience now, when you look at them just outside the mouth and stuff like that and not eating well, I know when it's like a method feeder thing. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. When I was at Belingi, I lost one, and basically it broke me because I'd caught too many fish that I only used 018. But I lost 2 fish that I tried my damnedest to get them out. And they weren't big fish, but I was trying, it just popped off, and I thought, that's weird, that is. And after the match, because of the festival, sort of day one of Belingi, and like, Belingi is solid, like, it's unbelievable venue, to be honest. And it just had an off day. It just wasn't good. So after the match, I'm like, oh no, it's day one. Like, I've had a pathetic day, to be honest. I've really struggled. That's sort, and I was just thinking to me, well, that's the end of my festival. That's sort of my drop result. I'm going to have to win every day after this now, because I ain't going to do any good today, because I've caught nothing. And you're in the back bowl bit, and I don't know, just over £100, I think. And I'm thinking, it turned out, when you're looking around, there was like some people that literally had caught 2 or 3 fish in the last knockings they cannot get a buy. So the second I see that and looked at the results, it's like, yeah. But if it was, say, a £200 day where everyone's emptying it, apart from the ones that broke me, or the ones that I lost that I would say were my fault, I pulling too hard or just whacking them with a net or something like that, my thing, I bet I wouldn't have lost a fish. Because when they're eating, they're competing, they're like, get out of my way, I want my food, you know what I mean? So they're going for it, they're proper aggressive, so they're going to eat well. When everything's a bit, it's not good, you know. And the same goes for your pole fishing. When they're coming in, they're sort of looking, because they're coming to the noise of the bait, but they don't want to feed. It could be a bit bright, a bit flat, you know, and you foul looking at Odden. That's what it can be as well, you know. So I'm not just going to sit here and say, well, you need to be using this, you know. Sometimes the fish, they're just, you know, they have funny days, basically. If they were easy to catch, and it didn't matter, we'd all be using, like, you know, 060 braid and a 6 hook with a single maggot, and just, like, it does make a difference, doesn't it? So yeah, I think, again, touching on that confidence bit, that's why it's really important for me to be confident, you know. So you get a not bad day as such, it's not gonna, you're not going to be thinking, right, well, that's it, I've been in all of that. And because, again, you've got to go through all of that confidence, all that time, you know, to build up the confidence in it as well. So hopefully that helps. And then this one's from Pablo Grant. Which Blake's ground bait would you be using at the moment for carp and skimmers, plus a few Iden Crucians? Okay. Iden Crucians. So what I'm going to say, Pablo, is what I'd be using for carp and skimmers. Is this the pole? I'm going to assume it's the pole. So I'm going to grab it for you. What I should have done was turn it that way, shouldn't I? Because all my rubbish is over there. But again, 1 second, though, please. And I'll find it. That could have been disastrous. I kicked my old charger bit from my laptop. That would have been bad, wouldn't it, if we'd have gone over that way and crashed? So, for me, method feeder fishing, I'll pop that one down. I'm just sold on this now. So, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the pole version first. So, when Paul Yates come on board at Blake's, he wanted a coarse expander for his pole fishing. And at the time, I was thinking, I don't know, you know, when you're fishing expander, do you not want it, you know, nice and quiet, fine and stuff like that? And again, because I'm intrigued by anything, if there's a good angler and wants something, I want to know why, and I want to have a look, because they must want it for a reason. You know, again, if they've got confidence and belief in something, you cannot know everything. No matter where you are, you know, on your ladder of learning, you cannot not learn from other people. So when he made this course expander for Blake's, I was like, had a mix with it, looked at it, and I just thought, this is just unbelievable. This is just the best ground bait I've ever used, because with all my ground bait, when it comes to fishing for skimmers, carp, F1s, you know, not skimmers, they are silverfish, but when I'm feeding it, I want micros in with my bait, because that's the food. Normally with your ground bait's the smell, or I say like with your bacon sandwich, you know, your ground bait, that's the attraction, that's the smell of a bacon sandwich. Your micros, that's the bacon and sandwich, that's the food for the fish to eat. And I always feel that you want that in your mix. What Paul made is basically that, the smell of the bacon sandwich and the bacon and the sandwich in one bag. And what I really liked about it is the fact that it's not uniform. It's just smashed up bits. So we all know how good pellets are for carp. And we all know how good, you know, like micros, 4 mils, 6 mils, 8 mils, not just for carp, for F1s, skimmers, everything eats them. They love eating pellets. But with you, again, I touched on that with my method feeder mix, but they've seen it a lot. You know, everyone feeding micro pellets, so they associate them with food. They like eating them. They know what it is. What I really liked about this when I mixed it up is, one, that it's got that attraction in terms of like the finer particles. But what I really liked about it was that coarseness to it. And when you pour it in, you think it almost feels a bit gravelly. That's probably the best, sand gravel. That's what I would say. It's like, oh, I'm not too sure about this. When you mix it though, and then particles absorb that water, oh my gosh, it's just unbelievable. So again, I probably shouldn't say this because we've done the guru thing, but this course expander is the one for the pole. It's just unbelievable. When you mix it and then you add some micros to it, you just look at it and just think, that's just a joke. Like, that's the best thing ever. So since I've been using this, I'll try my best with my light, show you sort of like, it's difficult, but basically you can see the coarseness of it. And when I use that, when Paul brought it out, that's it now. That mix for me for sort of commercial, carp, F1s, Supreme, that's just the mix, just the best mix ever. When you mix it up, just the texture of it, you look at it and just think, that's just the one. It's just the best thing ever. Whereas now, when I look at fine expander, now don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place when it's rock hard, but even when it's rock hard, I'd rather just use that and just keep tapping a bit of loose in. I just think that one, and again, it's that confidence, going back to what we said at the very start, confidence and belief and what you're happy using. There's other people that might look at that and think, you know what, I'm not too sure about that. I'd much rather use the fine one. Well, use what you're happy with. But personally, when I started to use that, that was just perfect for me because it made perfect sense. I was using fine expander or pole mix and adding micros to it. But it's very uniform with your micro pellets. And I always want to put a few micros in because that's the food value. You know, the ground bait's the attraction, the micros is the food. With that, what I really like, the fact that it was misshaped, the fact that the fish probably never seen this before. And I just thought, well, that can only help. And I love the fact that, you know, it's a right mishmash of everything. And when you mix it up, it's just like, yeah, that's the one for me. So personally, that's the one that I want to use on my pole. Course expander. It's absolutely bang on. Give it a try. I'm telling you now, you won't be disappointed. So after that coming out, we were again, like with the method mix, I think it was never bang on for me, to be honest. And I got them to like I was thinking about it, and Garth said to me, I can do you some coarse carp. And I was like, no, you could. And it was like, well, yeah, of course I can. I'll do it just the same way I do the expander. It's like, yeah, go on then. Can you do me some? And then I took it to Whiteacres. Never used it before, but with how much confidence I've got in the expander, that one then, again, pellets, mashed up, mishmash, in terms of, I know that they love pellets. Like on a method feeder, you look at it now, there is definitely a time and a place still for ground bait, but they love pellets. And I was thinking, this is the one. I already knew as soon as he said it, I thought, how can I didn't think of that? Like, well, I didn't. But when you're thinking, like, I think we overthink stuff. And when he said to me, I'll make you some, and I just knew that's the one. That is just going to be the method feeder ground bait for me. So again, it's exactly like the expander, but it's pellets, you know, not expander pellets, you know, actual pellets. And as soon as I got it, honestly, and I mixed it up, and the way it binds and stuff, and then I can add a few micros to it. So it's got food in it, and again, pellets that they ain't never seen before that I'm aware of. They might well have done, but in my fishing, they've never seen it before. That's not to say nobody else has ever done it. But they would have seen mic pellets a lot more than they'd have ever seen this. And I just thought, you know what, that is the one. Because even when I'm fishing with ground bait, I still want micros in with it. And I just thought, that's it. It's just a one bag does the lot. And I like one bags that do everything type thing. You know, I don't want a 20% of this or 30% of that, or I need to add a sprinkling of this stuff. I just want to open a bag, mix it up, concentrate on the important things in the fishing. You know, like having your bait right, it's important. But what I mean by is making sure my casting's good, how often I cast, how I load my feeder up, where I put my hook bait, you know, that side of it as well. So, yeah, I'm absolutely sold on it. So personally, when it comes to my method feeder fishing, I just absolutely love this coarse carp. And then for my pole fishing, that coarse expander one, give them to a try for like your method and your pole fishing. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. So hopefully that helps. Pablo, so this one's from Marine Fish Guru. Pre-tied hooks have saved me hours of prep. I know I'm not going to sit here and tell you, but I know there's loads of brilliant anglers that use pre-tied hooks, and when you look at them, they're so well tied. I'd almost go, I couldn't tie them as uniform as that, to be honest. But I've got the time, and I make time for it because I enjoy it. So if I didn't have the time and didn't enjoy it, 1,000,000% pre-tie. So you can just tie the loop, you just tie your own loop and shorten them down to size. So yeah, definitely. I haven't got a problem. You know, I'm not going to sit here and knock it, basically. They're so well tied. I can see why, to be honest. But I genuinely think most people, I'd go as far as saying 95% of anglers could not tie them as well as the pre-tied hooks are tied. So our next one's from John Maiden. Hi, Paul. How would you approach club pool going tomorrow for a bit of a pleasure fishing? So club pool, if you go in there, pleasure fishing, John, I would go and sit on around about 19 to 21. I would probably, you'll definitely catch plenty of fish. I'd probably, if it was me, just going for a pleasure session, I would probably fish. Again, I don't know if you use short kits or long kits. It doesn't really matter. But I'll probably fish round about what I would say would be a measured. So if you use long kits and long fours, round about 11 meters. If you use a short kit and a short four, like you can use your 13-meter section, it's in that same sort of level. And I'd just loose feed a few live maggots, just red maggots. It won't be very deep there. It'll probably be, I'm going to say 3.5 foot-ish, maybe just over 3.5 foot. I just loose feed a few live maggots there, throw a few live maggots short as well, and you'll have a lovely day. With your long line, you might want to, you know, if you're going to start on that, so go out, plumb up as such. Once you've got all your rigs sorted in there, literally just for 20 minutes or so before you're going to, you know, fish, I would just sit there, just with your catapult, and just loose feed like 6 to 8 maggots every, I don't know, 2 minutes, and just do that for sort of 20 minutes, get some fish. Don't start doing it because sometimes you can foul hook a few. Just give it 15-20 minutes, just flicking a bit of bait in, and then go out. One thing I will say is make sure you set a shallow rig up. Now, shallow rig wise, again, I'll just use like a little a tiny little float. Don't take a lot of shot. This is the little 4B8 Winter Maggers. Just takes 5 number 12 shot. And you will definitely, at some point, I'm convinced of it, because it's so mild, you will definitely catch a few shallow. So anywhere, I would say, I mean, the thing is, with club being quite shallow, it might be worth setting a little dibber rig up as well, sort of to fish 14-inch deep roughly, but you will 1,000,000% catch them shallow there tomorrow. So you'll be able to catch a few on the bottom, and then when you start feeding, they will definitely come shallow. You know, especially in that little area, it might take a bit of time, but they will 1,000,000% come shallow. So set a couple of shallow rigs up, just a little strung out rig, a longer line, you know, and then just a couple of back shots. You don't want to be fishing with dead short lines now. You will still catch a few, but just by having a bit of a longer line and just fish, you know, like 2 or 3 number 8 back shots, even though using a light little flow. That way, when you hold your pole above the water, so sort of say your float's here, your back shot, say where my thumb is, where that's always going to be tight, if that makes sense. So as you lower it, your back shot's going to move. And as soon as you get a bite, just gently lift your back shots and you're in connection with your flow. Definitely give that a go. Just, you know, cat in a few maggots. You'll have a lovely day there. I'm sure of it. So give that a go, because I'm definitely thinking you'll catch that, Kev. John, sorry. And then our next question, that's why I messed it up, it's from Kevin. When making pole rigs up, what length do you make them, Kev? So with my winders, because I've basically just got 2 winders, if that makes sense. I've got my pink reed one that I've always had, and then my little green one. What I would do with your winders, so I'm just going to assume that you don't have these. So just say with my dibber rig, I want that on, say, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of a long kit. I'm never going to need it any longer than that. So what I would do personally is maybe tie your rig up, and you want it, you know, X length. And then the way that I do it is with my little staple. And then what I do is I just count the rotations. So I don't know how long you've been on, Kev, but we did tie a rig up. So after this, maybe rewind it. And you see, like, I just wrap it around however many times I want it to. But once you've measured your rig, basically, I'd much rather have waist like 2 foot of line than try and do it exactly this. I'd always rather have a little bit more, because again, I go here, there, and everywhere, you know. Well, I don't need these for Porth now, but if I was tying this rig like we did earlier, I'd done it 6.5 turns, 6.5 wraps after. So I put my rig on, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then a half to get back to the thinnest point. But if I was going to Porth, I might have done that, say, 8 wraps. So I know that I've got more than enough line to be able to use that rig if I wanted it at Porth, but I'm never going to be going back there, unfortunately. So I know that I've just tied this rig for gold, and it's maximum 8 foot deep. So I know with that, that's going to be absolutely spot on. So again, depending on what winders you use, and your rigs, maybe for all your dibber rigs, you know, because sometimes I want like a long line dibber rig, even though that's a little F1 flow that you'd fishing in, say, you know, 6 to 12 inch deep. Sometimes having like 2.5 foot of line or even 3 foot of line and sort of flicking it out when it's real bright, and feeding off, you know, and holding onto my back shots, just like I said about that, you know, you like shallow rig sort of thing and having a longer line. So I want to tie these up to make sure that if I need that it's tied for that as such. So all I would do is just measure them up, and once you know that your top kit on your winder, say for a top kit, I'm just going to guess, say 6 turns on that's just over a top kit long, then perfect. I'm sure with this, for a top 4, this reed winder is 7 wraps after I've put my float on, and that's the top 4 deep. So once you know that, like, for argument's sake, that rig, I'm never going to want it top 4 deep. I'm only going to want it X amount. So by whipping it around, so just whatever winders you use for each rig as such, or more, you know what half a top kit is in terms of a wrap on that and maybe a wrap on that. But for half a top kit, you're probably only more likely going to be using that winder. And then say for your bigger winder, for a full top kit, it's going to be this many wraps around it for your top kits on your winder. And then again, if you do any top 4 deep fishing or deeper than the top kit, so you're tying up some 2 gram rigs where it's sort of, you know, top 4 deep. And again, for your winder, you know how many wraps it is for the top 4. And once you've got that, it's just a lot easier to sit down and think, right, I want it this many wraps. So that's the way I would do it for your winders and your rigs, Kevin. So hopefully that helps. So this one's from Peter Wilcox. Hi Paul, not a match angler, but myself and wifey both enjoy a lot of pleasure fishing, loving the content and the help that's given. Cheers, your star. No problems at all, Peter. Fishing's fishing at the end of the day. Ours is competitive, but pleasure fishing still just as good. I love going out and having a practice. Yes, it's sort of competition based. I'm practicing for that, but just going out and loving your fishing, that's what it's all about. We're all the same at the end of the day. We all love fishing, and that's what it's all about. And hopefully if I can, give you a few little tips to help you catch a few more fish, then that is what it's all about. That's sort of goal achieved for me, if that makes sense. So I'm glad you're enjoying it, Peter. So this is from Jamie. I think what we do, I'll answer this one and then I will love you and leave you and let you crack on with the rest of your Saturday. And I will definitely be doing an odd and more. I will try and sort of do it maybe on the same day or the same day as such. But what I'll probably do in future is just advertise it a little bit in advance so you're aware. This one was just a trial one, to be honest. I wanted to give it a go. I was doing a bit of prep anyway. And any of you that have seen the start, I knew it was probably not going to be easy, so I thought I'm going to give it a go. But it's gone really, really well, and hopefully you've all enjoyed it. If you could give me like a like or what subscribe to our channel, I'd really appreciate that. Really, really appreciate that. You don't have to, but it definitely helps me grow the channel as such. So to get out to a few more people and hopefully help out, a few more people as well. So if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. Don't have to, I'm not begging for it, but I would appreciate it. So our last one that I'm going to do, or last couple. So this one's from Jamie Durup. Hopefully, Jamie, I've said that right for you. Again, not the best. I can put plenty of shots on really, really nicely, but I'm not the best educated. So do you think there will be any more southern venues involved in big qualifiers anytime soon? We're pretty limited down here at the moment. Definitely, Jamie. It's always been that way. Like even when it was team fishing, when I used to fish for Dorking quite a few moons ago now, it was always the same with the finals. Just the way that it is, unfortunately. And when they do seem to have qualifiers down here, when you say big qualifiers like Match This, Fish Show, Golden Reel, is there another one? I'm not too sure. No, they're the three: Fish Show, Match This, and Golden Reel. The problem is they're not. The reality is we haven't got as many anglers down here as in the Midlands and up north, so they never really sell out. And when we say southern venues, this is a perfect example. So from what I'm aware of, where I live, which is in Reading, I'd say I'm from, south as such. So for me to go to Monks, 2 hours. For me to go to Viaducts, 2 hours. For me to go to Tunnel is an hour and 40 minutes. So Tunnel is closer to me than what would be called a southern qualifier like Monks, which is in Kent, and Viaduct, which is Somerset way. It's actually closer for me to go to the Midlands than it is further south. So if it's closer for me to drive to the Midlands, and I would say I'm southern, if that makes sense, like going to Viaducts and to Monks, I don't want to go to Monks. I've got nothing wrong with Monks, but it involves the M25. So when it comes to coming home, well, your guess is as good as mine. That road is an absolute nightmare, and I can't do it to myself. Whereas going to Tunnel is lovely. I go like M4, A34, M40, which is more often not lovely. I know, the roads are good. But I think that's the problem with it is the southern venues. We haven't got enough anglers down here that want to do that style of fishing. So they're never really going to sell out. And again, when it comes to, there's a Match This at Monks, I'm not going to go because I'd rather go to Tunnel because it's closer and I haven't got to worry about the road. And I think that's the problem. One thing that I will say is John Cook run Fish South last year, and that was brilliant, like really, really good for all of us Southerners. It was well supported, and I thought everything about it was brilliant. I really, really enjoyed it. So although the money is never going to be, like the 30, 40, 50 grand type thing. But to be honest, how long that amount will carry on from now on, I don't know, to be honest, because the cost of it all, like the cost of fuel, your tickets, just everything, the cost of living's gone up. I just think it's really going to hit them hard. And I know that they're running a Fish Midlands as well. And I genuinely think those 3 competitions for your region, Fish North, Fish South, and they're going to be running Fish Midlands. I just think those ones will take over a little bit because it costs a bit less to do it, because obviously you're not traveling as far. I really enjoyed it because I got to see all of the lads that I grew up with. So that was really, really nice for me. I never had to travel that far, which was lovely. I could actually go home, go fishing from my house and come back home to my house, which is a rare privilege for me, to be honest, when it comes to like qualifiers and stuff like that. I got to see all the local lads and it was brilliant. And you don't need to beat as many people to qualify. Yes, the final's never going to be worth as much money, but I just found the whole experience a lot nicer. It's a lot more chilled out. Again, get to see all of, because it's everyone from your area. You know, I got to see like Tommy a bit, and he's brilliant. I always get a load of grief, and it's just so nice to be around, you know, like your little area of the lads and such, going to the venues. And I just felt it was just everything about it was a real nice atmosphere, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I genuinely think with the cost of everything going up, I know from my own personal point of view, and I'm very fortunate, you know, to be sponsored and stuff like that, and also be able to do this for a job. I know for an absolute fact, I will not be able to do as many qualifiers as I've done last year. Biggest thing is being the fuel. It's just getting to the point now where it's so expensive, and then you add on to, you know, your tickets, your bait, your pools. You're just pricing. I just feel like it's pricing you out of it, you know. It's just too expensive now, to be honest, and that's from my point of view. So I genuinely think if I'm looking at it like that, then there'll be a fair few people looking at it like that. So although I don't think, you know, the big qualifiers will change in terms of like the qualification venues, I don't know how long they'll be able to keep it up for if people are not going. Like, I think Fisho's a bit different because it's Matchroom, and obviously, you know, they've got a lot of money as such. So they'd probably be able to carry on with Fisho, and it wouldn't really matter, you know, however many people went in it, they'd probably still be able to put the prize money up the way they do. I don't think it'd change a lot. But as for Match This and Golden Reel, ultimately, you know, we're the ones, all your qualifiers, you're the ones paying for the prize pot. So if less people are fishing, you're going to have less money to pay out. And I genuinely think, sort of like Fish North, Fish Midlands and Fish South, I just think, excuse me, those competitions will grow slightly. So last year, the final was 10 grand to the winner. Like this year, it might be like 12. Like if they can grow it a bit more, it might be a little bit more. And then if they sell that out and there's still people on the waiting list, I genuinely think those competitions will just grow a little bit. I don't think they'll ever be like, you know, 30, 40, 50 grand. I can't see it. But I think those ones will grow a bit because then, you know, the cost of it is just less because you're traveling less. So that's how I can see it personally. I might be wrong, but that's how I see it. So that's what I would say. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed it. And then we've got from Marine Fish. Thanks, Paul. Looking forward to next time. Glad you enjoyed it, Marine Fish. And then Sean Downs, great chat, Paul. Very informative and interesting. Cheers. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed it. And like I say, I'll make sure the next one that I do, I plan in advance. But to be honest with this, because I knew that I was doing it, and I know that Baz is fishing this weekend and Joe's in Bristol. So my two technical gods are not with me. I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. Can't be that hard, can it? That's what I was genuinely thinking. But I didn't want to promote it too much, only to find out I press a button and it just all goes wrong. And then I've got a lot of disappointed people. So I thought with this one, I'll just try my best. If we got on, we got on. If we didn't, we didn't. But yeah, the next one, I make sure I just advertise it a little bit more in advance. But no, I really appreciate everyone watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and enjoy Sunday if you are out. And I will catch up with you all next time. Thanks for watching. Cheers.